Hey there, I'm excited for you today to meet my friend Rodney Hightower, one of the most Hollywood sounding names of all time. Um, Rodney and I got connected early last year, so early 2020, when I started helping his company, the company he works for, with brand strategy. And as sometimes happens, you pick up new friends in a project. We connected afterwards. We've kept in touch. And I really admire Rodney as a sales expert. No pressure, Rodney. You don't have to
No,
flex your expertise muscles today, but I just value his perspective. He's got good stories to share. You've also sold in different environments, which I think is interesting. It hasn't just been all training or all consulting. You were also in not a retail space, but you can share more about cellular sales or whatever. I don't want to steal the words from your mouth. So, Rodney, thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your approach to sales, and then we'll kind of see where the conversation goes from there.
cool, man. I appreciate the kind words and thanks for having me. Yeah, the first, well, this is going to really make me sound pretty old, but the last couple of decades, I've been in the wireless industry. And the first couple of years was with AT&T, and then after that was with Cellular Sales, which is an agent for Verizon Wireless and locations all over the country. And that's where I really learned the most about sales, I think, because it gave me an opportunity to work in a retail environment with standalone, big, beautiful standalone buildings. I
Hmm.
got an opportunity to work in the malls and kiosks, little carts outside of jewelry stores or whatever it may be, and kind of slanging phones out of a cart in a mall, as we used to call it. And you learn how to, kind of cut your teeth in different environments. And I was around a lot of really awesome salespeople who were very kind enough to teach me a lot of things
Yeah.
and guide me through that process. And had an opportunity to do a few other things working with Slayer Sales. It was a wonderful experience. Those guys are like my family. And so here we are today working with Sales Managed Solutions. And I got connected with these guys at SMS through my previous employer. And it is all consulting based around helping other companies recruit high activity salespeople, onboard high activity salespeople, sales coaching, and leadership development. Those are the three primary pillars the areas that we play the most in. We'll do a few other things as well, but those are the areas that we're targeting uh, very specifically.
Can you define high activity for me?
Yep. So anyone that's in an industry that has a sales cycle of 90 days or less, 3 months or less, that's a high activity. You've got a short sales cycle. With me previously, our sales cycle was anywhere from, you meet someone either in a retail store, and we did a lot of outside B2B sales too. We were able to generate leads from inside the store and then carry our business outside of the walls of that location.
Got it.
And sales cycle could be anywhere from 30 minutes up to 3 days to 3 weeks. So that's a high activity sales environment, sales culture, salesperson. You think about another industry would be maybe insurance sales. Um, for a while, some people considered real estate to be high activity, but that has transitioned over the past few years. That sales
Hmm.
cycle could be significantly longer. But that's kind of a long answer to your question. But anything that's 90 days or less, that's what we're looking for.
So, has your approach changed since you're out of the high activity context?
Dude, it has changed more than I could have ever imagined.
Okay.
And it's worked out. It's been an absolute learning experience for me because I've been in that super high paced environment for so long. And I'm going to try not to spend too much time talking about activities, focusing on the activities that produce the results. But now, there's been a few clients that I've worked with that my sales cycle has taken one specifically 8 months that I've been working on this opportunity.
Wow.
And whereas before that would have never crossed my mind. If it was something I didn't think could be closed within 30 days, I'm out. I'm like, oh, well, that's not a good opportunity for me, or I'm not a good, or I'm not the right person to work with them. But as my environment has changed, I've learned over the years what I'm comfortable with as a salesperson. I've learned over the years what my style is, and looking for the right fit, not just, hey, can I sell this person something, but do I really have something of true value that can help this person or this business, this company be better in the areas that they need help in? Like, is it mutually beneficial, and take a step back and slow the process down and really identify if it's a good fit or not? It's slowed down significantly.
So I think it's interesting what you said about your sales style. Give me a couple of bullet points. Like, how would you describe your sales style as distinct from somebody else's?
I didn't know this early in my sales career because I was just selling. I was just trying to close a sale, earn some money, go to the next thing.
Buy this phone.
And
Come on. You
yeah,
want it.
yeah, we got to buy one, get one. Do you need two? Do you need three? Do you need four?
All the
So
phones.
yeah, man. And while there's a part of me that definitely misses that high paced, exciting environment, it still exists in my world now. It's just a little bit more methodical. It's more there's more of a process behind each thing. So what I didn't know then that I know now is understanding what relationship selling means, which is also considered by some others to be consultative selling.
Sure.
Slow down a little bit, ask questions, not just, don't just bombard somebody with a million open-ended questions and find out in 3 minutes if you're going to pre-qualify them for whatever it is that I'm selling or that they're selling, but really get to know them. I'm about the relationship side of it, and that doesn't work for everybody, and I understand that, and more than respect it. But I'm all about the relationship side of it. The closer I can, the more I can connect with somebody and better understand not just their problems, their areas of weaknesses, and their challenge, all those things. It's learning about people, and when I came to realize how important that was to me, it made selling a lot different for me because it really just turned into a conversation. But that conversation, there are specific, as a salesperson, there are specific questions we always have to ask. There's things we have to know. There's things we have to uncover in those first appointment, second appointment, discovery calls. We got to find this piece of information out. Otherwise, we're wasting their time and ours, but more importantly, we're wasting theirs. So you've got to be methodical with the questions that we ask. But that's what I've learned most is slowing down, just having a real conversation with folks and learning about them. It's been what I like the most.
You bring up a good point, which is you have to get a hold of specific information and to ask questions that get you the information you need. Doesn't have to be mechanical. It doesn't have to be, you're not like pulling teeth. You can still be strategic in, sort of weaving those questions into the conversation so that you're not wasting your time if there's not an opportunity here. You're not wasting the other person's time if they don't actually have a need that you can address. But the whole thing can still be natural and organic, and you're not rushing people to this point of decision. It can still be organic. Is that accurate?
You probably worded that a whole lot better than I can. That was very well said. We need to go back and write that down. So yeah, and when we take that salesy pressure off of the conversation, it changes the whole tone from start to finish. The most challenging part is getting somebody on the phone. The most challenging part is setting that first appointment. That's once we get there, if we're able to have just a conversation with people and set expectations of here's what our goals are today. Here's what I'd like to learn. And here's a few things I'm going to ask, and map out the conversation for folks. And if but not robotic, you said mechanical, I like that, but not being robotic.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3 to 4 things that we need to find out on every first appointment, on every discovery call. These are 3 to 4 things we've got to know. And the more that we learn beyond that, then cool. We're just learning more. We're building more of that relationship. But we have to be able to do that. And we've got to have a process for that. So being able just to be casual, COVID, as we all know, is I'm casual right now. I'm used to wearing a suit and tie and being clean shaven every day. And uh I like that. I love that. People are more natural. We're more human, and people like doing business with other humans. Has been my experience, and so hopefully that makes some sense.
It does. And, I think reframing the goal of the call as here's what I would like to learn is so logical, right? It's like we know that we may have an opportunity to work together to exchange value, so to speak, but we've got to learn a few things first. And so that's what we're here to do is learn. And I think framing even a first conversation that way is so much less likely to cause people to get their hackles up, to make people sort of skeptical from the minute one, because I think we've all been on the receiving end of high pressure tactics where the other person seemed to have no desire to learn anything about me. And in fact, they're sort of like shoehorning their product or service into my life without having taken the time to get to know me. So I think what you described sounds a lot more wholesome, a lot more enjoyable, honestly. This is kind of a rabbit trail question, but why do so many people think that that it has to be high pressure? Like, where did that come from? That whole style? No one, I've never met someone who likes it. So why is it so dominant?
I could probably argue myself with that question back and forth as I have over the years. And to answer your question, I believe, and my answer may change maybe in a year or two, but right now where I sit talking to you, to answer that question, what I believe came from is many, 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 many years ago. I don't know how many it is, but many years ago, sales in general got that reputation that salesperson knocks on your front door and you're about to be hustled something. Salesperson walks up to you in a parking lot, maybe, which I've actually experienced that, and they start hustling you something. I mean, it's like, and maybe that was how it was, and maybe still is today in some industries, but there's also movies that have done that. Think about Wall Street. Think about not Wolf of Wall Street, but old school Wall Street. And then you think about the Boiler Room. Like you watch sales movies like that, and you get jacked. Like it's exciting to watch the energy. And it's a movie, regardless if it's based on a true story or not. I don't have any ideas. People
Right.
speculate about that all day, but it's fun to watch.
Right.
And and I remember being younger watching some of those movies and thinking, man, those guys are some closers, dude. Like they come in, they know what to say, how to say it, pinpoint accuracy, boom, done, sales closed, they earn 50 grand or something crazy.
Right.
And maybe there are industries like that. I would imagine there are. Maybe that's where it came from. I'm not sure, but fast forward to where we are today, everybody's consumers are smart. You and I are consumers.
Right.
We know when we got a sales call coming in. We know when we get an email it's a lead generating email. It's written in a way. We know when our LinkedIn inbox gets a message that's like this long and it might have my name in there, which there's all kinds of strategic ways that people can prospect. But a lot of times
we know when it's happening though.
And we all know it's happening, and so do the people that we're targeting, they know when it's going to happen. So just lay it out there. And here's this. I've told people on calls, this is a cold call, and you weren't expecting my call today. Do you have a few minutes right now? Just like throw it out there. Just call it what it is. Like if there's a pink elephant in the room, talk about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about specifically about what we're saying and how we're saying it. Just being natural and just having a respectful conversation with people
Yeah.
and trying to come to an agreement.
You bring up a really good point, which is we're uncomfortable with sales. We need to sell. Because we're uncomfortable with sales and yet need to sell, we often apologize for it instead of just acknowledging that this is a cold call. One of my lines that I use in emails is, I hope you'll forgive the email out of the blue. But then I stop apologizing because I believe that I can create value for the right people. And I don't think we actually like people who apologize too much. Like stop acting like a beaten dog. It's like, so there is a social contract that we have that often goes unacknowledged where I have needs. And if you show up and you can meet one of my needs or solve one of my problems or help me achieve one of my goals, I'm happy to hear from you. Right. And if we can have like a really enjoyable, satisfying, maybe even illuminating conversation, all the better. Right. So I like your approach. There's a certain confidence that comes from naming the pink elephant in the room, calling it out, and then just being very gracious and saying, do you have a couple minutes to talk? Right. I just really like that approach. It's, let me acknowledge that you weren't expecting a call or a sales call, but now that we're here, are you open to this? Do people generally respond well to that phrasing, that I'll call it that line?
Yeah. Yeah. Man, it can be hit or miss like any other line that somebody might use. But at least with that one for me, I'm being real. I'm not sugarcoating anything. I'm telling you what it is, where we are. At least I can maintain, I don't want to say maintain dignity because we all do that, but at least feel, well, man, I told them what it was and they hung up on me or they just said no thanks or whatever, however it may go. And that happens. It happens no matter what we say because we have no idea what's going on the other end of that call. We have no idea what's going on. We just don't have a clue, So we just have to play it by ear. And some of the other responses I've gotten, people kind of pause for a minute and laugh, probably laughing at me. It's certainly not with me, even if I'm laughing. Like, is this guy crazy? A little bit I am. So it can go both ways, but at least man, I've also learned you got to have fun. It's if we can't laugh at ourselves and think, man, what I just said was the silliest thing. How did I say that? Why did I just laugh at ourselves?
Yeah.
Or hopefully if we're working with someone, they can kind of coach us and laugh with one another. That's a nice benefit to working with other people in an office, So you got to have fun with it because that redundancy will wear on most people. So you just got to have fun with it.
You bring up, again, a bunch of good points. One of them that came to mind was it's actually more awkward to go through all of these contortions to try to create the perception that this is something other than what it is. This is me getting in touch out of the blue because I have something to sell you. And it's actually less awkward to, like you said, acknowledge the pink elephant. Let's call it what it is. And then I'll let you decide whether or not you're open to this. But, I've gotten those calls, although most of the time I just screen everything now. But it's more emails and LinkedIn messages where I'm like, you get the question. It's like, Rodney, what is your biggest challenge right now? And I'm kind of like, Are you trying to start a conversation with me because you have something that you would like to sell me, you know?
Right.
Um,
That you don't even know if I need, that
yeah.
you don't even know if it's going to help me. Like, I can help your business do this. Well, how do you know my business needs help in this area?
Oh
You're just
my
like, it's a
gosh.
total
Yes.
assumption,
Like,
complete assumption. They have had no idea. They probably don't know anything about your business or my. And that's another thing too, real quick, to go off on a slight tangent. We've got to know about the people that we're calling on. We need to research them. I'm not suggesting, which I'm guilty of, over researching and trying to learn everything I can about Widget LLC, which is just a general term for naming any business. Widget LLC. We make widgets. Learning about them, learning enough to be able to have a conversation with folks where they can say, okay, this person, whoever it is, this person knows a little bit about our business and they want to learn more. At least show enough respect to be able to do that.
mhm. You're right about getting those generic boilerplate templates and people trying to sell you when without first establishing a need. About, I'd say 2 or 3 times a week, I get an email from someone trying to sell me a phone system for my business. I'm like, I don't need a phone system, right? And then there's a CPA local to Knoxville where I am who, it wasn't just one message. He had a whole sequence, which is fine. But I thought, man, you could have avoided all this effort if you just said something like, are you already working with a CPA you're really happy with? Because if I said no, then a next natural question is, would you be open to a conversation about how I work with clients and help them achieve X, Y, and Z, right? And then, well, if I don't have a CPA and I would have that openness, awesome. Now there's an opportunity, right? But I
Yeah.
just thought it was so funny. I'm like, dude, you're not, you're barking up the wrong tree because I've already got a CPA. Why didn't you ask me the most important question first is there a need here? Right?
Yeah.
So you are now in this environment where you're selling high ticket consulting engagements, and it may take months to develop these relationships. How do you keep in touch?
A few different ways. And I was just having this conversation with someone yesterday. Is we all have a preferred channel of communication.
So true.
May it be voice, video, text, social media, email, and really, regardless of, I believe, if we know it or not, we actually prioritize those in our minds as far as which one we're going to respond to the quickest. Like, I know I'm going to reply to a text message quicker than anything else that somebody's going to send me. I know that I will,
Huh.
but not everybody will. I've got several voicemails that I've got to listen to that I haven't got to. I use the voice where it transcribes it, turns it into text where I can read it. Uh, Everyone's like that. So trying to find, and sometimes I've even asked, how do you prefer to be communicated with? Would you like for me to use, and I'll label them, excuse me, I'll name them out loud almost and give them like multiple choice. Would you prefer text, phone call, email? What's your preference? It's a very casual conversation, a very casual question. And some folks are just like, man, whatever works best for you. And I'm like, okay, cool. But oftentimes people tell me, man, text is the best way to get a hold of me. I could think of one specific person I was working with for a little while. I could call him, never get him, hang up the phone, boom, he'll send me a text message. And at first I was like, what's going on with this? Well, then I thought about it and I'm like, well, that makes sense because this guy's probably a dynamo. He's multitasking.
Yeah.
He's doing a few things at once. And, okay, cool. So I need to be able to adapt to that.
Mm.
And that can make it a challenge for some of us, particularly if some folks aren't as comfortable maybe on video.
Mm-hmm.
I like being face to face with people in real life. And COVID, not having that for a while, has been a big obstacle and challenge for me, personally and professionally. Personally for everyone, I would imagine, hopefully, but certainly from a professional standpoint, because That's my preferred, really my number one preferred style and method of communication is in the room, face to face. I want to see, I want to shake hands, I want to high five, I want to dab it up, whatever it may be. I want to be around that person. So being able to find how they communicate, and I'll take a note of that in my CRM, and we'll get to that probably hopefully in a little bit, but I'll take a note of that, their preferred method. And as I go back into my notes, and I don't do it 100% of the time, I would be telling a story if I said that, but I try to do it. And I'm trying to let that be more part of my process so that I can contact them the way they prefer to be communicated with.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. You're going to see better response if you're meeting people where they want to be met, if you're talking to people the way they want to be talked to, right? It's so simple, and yet I think, as in a lot of relationships, when we're developing a new relationship with someone who might become a customer or client, we just default to our own preferences. And you use that word adapt, and I think like adaptability is really important here. You kind of can't be too proud to just adapt, pivot. They prefer text messages. Okay, great. I mean, especially like email is still often my preferred mode because it's sort of command control for a lot of communication. I'm the worst with text messages, like the worst. And then voicemails, I tend to see that they come in and then forget about them. Facebook Messenger, not great. Slack, not great. I mean, in a way, I've spent the last however many years trying to eliminate modes of communication. So you sort of alluded to this phenomenon of a lot of the people we're trying to get in touch with are just very busy, have a lot on their plate, moving target, and you got to be willing to adapt.
It's funny when I look at my phone. I mean, I've got a whole, and any of us could do it right now. We could look at our phone, and I would challenge everybody to go in there and count how many different messaging apps that we have on our devices.
Yes.
I don't even know, like, I don't know how many I've got. Obviously text messages, voicemails, and I've got LinkedIn, there's Instagram, YouTube, FaceTime, Sales Navigator, Facebook, Messenger. I mean, and that's just like a couple of them. That's not even.
It's overwhelming.
It is incredibly overwhelming. Yeah. And it can be very overwhelming when you're trying to stay focused in your day-to-day activities and your phone is constantly going ding, 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 ding. So we can only assume that theirs is doing the same. So how do we differentiate ourselves? What are we going to do that makes my ding, makes the sound beat different? Right. Which is a whole other conversation. But it's a challenge. You just gotta find how they want to be communicated with.
Well, a point that dovetails into that is you can't assume that if you don't hear back from somebody, they're not interested. If they're receiving dozens, if not hundreds of messages a day, it's just too easy these days for any one message to fall through the cracks, even if it's a message piece of communication that they want to receive. And I think too often we mistake people's silence or unresponsiveness for a lack of interest. Maybe even we start telling ourselves a story that we're bugging them. They don't want to hear from us anymore. So, question for you, how do you manage all of that internal chatter in your own mind when you don't get a response from a prospect?
Man, that's such a great question. And there's a few different ways, and I'm still working on that. As many years as I've been in sales and sales training, all the things, like, that's wonderful. It is still a challenge for me.
Right.
I'm every day, and there are days where I manage it significantly better than others, and those other days I'm like, man, I'm getting my teeth kicked in. Like, no one's replying back. I'm just hitting voicemail after voicemail, or am I even doing the right thing? What am I doing with my life? Like we start questioning ourselves.
Go to
And we
that
start
deep,
questioning
dark
ourselves and thinking,
place, right?
I mean, you do, and next thing you know, you're like, man, I got to go for a walk. I just got to get out of here, and that's okay. Whatever you need to do to get a breath of fresh air and just remind ourselves, man, it's going to be okay. Like it's whatever, it's going to be okay. It really is. And having an outlet, having friends, coworkers, spouses, whatever someone's outlet is, where you can share those things, not gripe at somebody and complain about your day,
Right.
but also someone that you can celebrate with, that will celebrate with you and encourage you, someone that will offer up uh, tough love when you're not performing maybe as well as you should be, and you're
Mhm.
whatever it might be in an area that needs some improvement. Having those types of relationships, because we can't always do it on our own in our own head. Because there's so many distractions
Mhm.
all around us. I can't believe that you haven't heard a few of the distractions I've got in my house right now. It's probably just a matter of time before you hear somebody squawking upstairs, and it's just there's always things. And for me, man, I'll. This is gonna sound really silly. I get in my car and I drive. Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes without my phone, I'll leave it in here charging, and I go and get in my car and just drive down. I got a specific place that I'll drive to, and I'll circle around in a parking lot. It's an empty parking lot of an old restaurant. They probably think I'm some creepy dude in this black SUV or whatever, but I'm just gathering my thoughts, man. I'm just kind of talking myself out of the thing, or walking myself through this thing. And as I've gotten older, I have learned more and more how much I need that,
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
valuable that is for me, professionally and personally, to be able to just decompress, take a breath, recharge my batteries for a minute, grab something to drink, and get back after it.
Well, you bring up some good points, which are there's a head game here, a mental game that doesn't get talked about nearly as often as like, here are lead gen strategies and here are follow up tactics, and use this template, or um, use this risk reversal line. And we often don't do a good job acknowledging like the emotional cargo of it's really easy to get discouraged, right? Like you have some good days and you have some bad days. And on the bad days, if like you have doors slammed in your face, all your calls go straight to voicemail, you get the no on a project or an opportunity that you had started to feel like was, oh, it's only a matter of time. And how you grapple with your own discouragement seems like it's like that's half the battle, you know? And to have those, it's almost like this sort of scaffolding, like to have that support structure in place. You go on drives, you mentioned walks, tapping someone you care about who can give you a quick little pep talk. I mean, I think that's everything, because you have to have that in order to not become too emotionally invested in any one project or opportunity, which I know enough about negotiation at this point to know if you get too invested, you're probably not going to make the best decisions or have the best judgment, right? You have to keep a little bit of distance there. And sometimes that's because you truly want to serve their needs. And if you get too emotionally invested and you start to say, I really, really need this, you may force it. And even if you can force it sometimes and actually get that person's money, what if you're not able to deliver the outcome, right? But
I've
anyway, I just
experienced
really
all of those. Everything that you just described, especially towards the end, I've I've done it. I've been a part of it, both ends of it, for various reasons. We all the things that you just described, and we talk about the mental side of life, but the mental side of sales. Man, you got to be tough, and it is not for the faint of heart, and it will knock you down, and then it will also um, give you the highest high you could ever have,
Mhm.
especially when you've made a connection with an opportunity that's just it's just such a great fit, and you end up building a great relationship.
That's right.
This month, real briefly, this month you may or may not know this, but it's Disability Month. Celebrating Disability Month is the month of July, and there's all types of disabilities in the world. We talk about mental disabilities, physical disabilities. We've all got challenges. We've all got things we've got to work against. And in the past many years, but specifically the past year, there's been a lot of conversation in the corporate world around, mental health and taking care of yourself mentally. And that is, I can't remember. I think you said 50% of the battle or whatever it is. Man, it may be more than that. I don't know what the percentage is, but if that part's not right, everything else is so much more painful. And it's so much more challenging to be able to have a real conversation, and perform at your best when we're not feeling our best. And this is me being very open and transparent. That's a struggle that I've had, and will have. It's just so trying again to find those resources and those outlets that keep us in check, that keep us level headed, cool, calm, don't blow your lid. Rodney, you are getting too emotionally attached to this thing, however it may look. And I've had people tell me that, and I might not thank them that much in that exact moment. When the dust settles, I'm very thankful for those relationships, and people can just say, bro, you need to chill out, man. You take a deep breath, go for a walk, go for a drive, go down to the empty parking lot and be the creepy guy. Like, whatever you need to do, you need to go do that.
Right.
So I just wanted to add that to your point.
I think becoming more experienced in sales, especially if you're doing it in a way that feels right to you, you're not changing your personality, but you're selling in a way that matches your personality and your values. Becoming more experienced in that, I don't think it is just being tougher or trying to not be bothered by rejection or by people's rudeness or whatever. I think it's trying to have shorter recovery times. Like, you're still going to get knocked down, and you're human, right? It's like emotions are always going to factor into this. And I don't think the objective then is to feel less, because I think that can backfire, right? Oh, great. Now nothing bothers you. You've become a kind of cyborg or something, right? That's not the goal. But I do think with experience, we pick ourselves back up a little bit faster. We dust ourselves off. You can say, well, man, that's really disappointing, or that was really discouraging, or, oh, that was frustrating, or that even made me mad. He didn't have to be unfair like that. He didn't have to take a cheap shot, or, she didn't have to make me feel small for having something to sell her, right? I sent a guy a LinkedIn message one time, and his response was, I asked him a question. I forget what the question was. Maybe it was a clumsy question. Who knows? But his response was, no thanks. Right? And there, at the time, I was like, oh, like, okay, I was just trying to start a conversation with you. Like, that doesn't make me a scumbag. No thanks. Right? You're always going to get responses from time to time that make you go, oh, but I think, well, how quickly do you bounce back? That, I think, is a competency or an objective worth striving for, is to just bounce back faster. Because everybody I know, yourself included, it's like, no, it's putting in the at-bats more than it is how many home runs you hit.
Yeah, and you talk about everything I'm hearing, and you're right, and everything I'm hearing is you're talking about optimism, and you got to be optimistic. Some people are naturally optimistic, and others aren't. And I've learned a lot about that the past several years, and that's one of the things that we actually teach now, and is optimism and how to uncover that in a person. And without it, it makes sales, it makes life, but it makes sales so much more difficult, stressful, and it increases anxiety in folks if they're just not naturally, if we're not them, but if we are not naturally optimistic. We've got to believe that good things are going to happen even whenever something bad just happens.
That's such a great point. we need to keep believing that something good is going to happen, even if something bad has just happened.
Mhm.
Okay, so as we land this plane, can you think of, it could be a story or it could just be some of your go-to tactics. I know we dragged tactics through the mud earlier, but when you do want to remind a prospect, hey, I'm here, following up, not dead yet, that Monty Python line, what do you do? What are some of the unusual or more creative ways that you follow up?
Um, one of the, something that comes to mind first is the follow up email, the follow up text, the follow up call, the follow up, whatever it may be. And if you can go to Google and do a Google search for this, what we're about to talk about briefly, is everyone says don't have the subject line of your email say just following up or just this, or don't have it say follow, like very specific things of what not to do. And I was sitting here, and this wasn't long ago, and I'm like, well, how creative can I be? How do I reword following up? How do I go into Word and I type it and I put everything into Grammarly, no matter what it is, it's going into Grammarly, so I don't embarrass myself. And I'm like, okay, look up synonyms for these words. I'm trying to figure out, well, I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm following up with them on our last conversation. Like, that's what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So this is crazy, man. And I started telling folks on our first or second call, here's what you can expect from me.
Okay.
This is how I follow up. And I make a joke of it. I'm like, it'll be a very brief email or text, like almost like I'm just kind of like knocking on your door every now and then, just saying, how are things? You know, or the other thing that people that Google, I'm using Google because it's such a generic thing. There's specific websites that say, don't say just checking in. Hey, just checking in. How are things going? Hey, just checking in. Hey, just following up. Where are you guys in the project? Like, everyone says those things. Well, it's the right thing to say.
Yeah.
So just say it. But I tell them, you can expect a message from me that the title is going to be just checking in. You can expect an email from me that the title of it's going to be following up, or a text message. This is just and I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to laugh at myself and say, how are things? I'm going to be very, very brief because I don't want to take up your time, but I need to let you know that I'm still here.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you know that I'm still here. I'm still available. I haven't gone anywhere. And that has been received one of two or three, four different ways. And right now, that has been kind of my go-to, because I'll spend more time trying to figure out how to reword that message than I will sending one that's generic. You know,
How do I
I'll
follow up
overthink it and
without
say, how
saying
can
that
I
I'm
reword
following up?
this?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm following up. I'm going to follow up with you, and my message is going to say follow up. Is that fair? And they'll laugh sometimes and say, yeah, man, that's cool. And we just go from there. That's just one example. There's a few other ones too, but I took a while to explain that.
It's funny. I mean, it's like people are always fond of saying that email marketing is dead or don't ever do this. And then you reflect back on your recent experience. You're like, well, I just did that and it wasn't a deal breaker. So, never use these words in your email subject lines. And you're like, well, I just did. And people opened it. So what does that
Yeah.
mean? And I think it goes back to your earlier point about adaptability, or pay attention to what works for you. Pay attention to what doesn't work for you. Okay. Is there one deal that you landed that you kind of had to work for that you're proud of? You don't have to offer identifying details, but could you tell us that, give us the short version of that story and pull out any ideas for people from it?
We had a lead that came in one day, and it came from an industry that I knew absolutely nothing about. As a matter of fact, when I learned about the business, I had to Google that industry to learn what that meant. True story. And it wasn't that long ago. I was like, what does that even mean? And then it was very interesting. And so we began that courting process, that that first date, and then we had a second date, and then we had a third date. And next thing I knew, man, this went on for several months before we finally came to an agreement that we wanted to make a commitment with one another for X amount of time to do this particular project.
Mm-hmm.
And from start to finish, you know, it ended up being about an 8-month ordeal, and it was the longest sales cycle I'd ever experienced. And it turned out to be a wonderful experience, I believe, for both parties. And it was just interesting because it challenged me to stay patient and persistent in that opportunity and not allow my typical dynamo spirit, now, go, go, go.
Mm-hmm.
It forced me to slow down and mirror their speed of work and their pace, which was significantly slower than mine. It doesn't make mine better or worse, or theirs better or worse. But I had to really, it challenged me, man. It made me grow. And I'm so thankful for just the opportunity to work with that company, but for what I learned, you know, and to be able to talk about it now, because I've never experienced that before. You know, it never, ever experienced that.
Well, what you just said, be patient. I don't think something old-fashioned like patience gets talked about enough. My experience too says that the bigger the project value, sometimes or often the longer the sales cycle, the longer you have to work or wait. And if you try to rush things, you may miss out on some of your best opportunities and best relationships.
You hit the nail right on the head. You know, there's another one I'm working on right now that my first contact with them was in August of last year. Was the very first I picked up the phone and called on this business. And
almost a year ago now.
Almost a year ago. And here we are, and I've got a meeting with them on Tuesday, thankfully. And I've had several meetings. It is, and I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if we don't know if we're going to work together or not. We don't know. We're still working that out. But if we do, then it'll be worth the time for everybody involved. And I believe it's a good fit. So that patience part of it and that slower sales cycle, man, it is, you know, a lot of deep breaths.
We don't like uncertainty. I think we want to know that this is going to pan out eventually, but so much of, you know, it's like, oh, the early bird gets the worm, or maybe the persistent bird gets the worm, but maybe it's more like the patient bird, like which bird is going to keep showing up, but also not rush things. But anyway, Rodney, this was a lovely conversation, very helpful, very fun, and I just appreciate your friendship, and all of the knowledge and wisdom you bestowed today. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the great conversation. I appreciate your friendship as well, man. And anything I can do to help going forward, or anything you can throw my way, man, I'm always looking to learn. We're always learning. So I appreciate you, dude.
Let's do it again. See ya.
See you, buddy.